In the previous video, we got introduced to the list interface, and we also started talking about the ArrayList class. So we're going to resume our grocery list Java class. We're going to finish that off, and then we're going to see how this all works in operation. So we've got the code to add a grocery item, as you can see on the screen there. We've got the code to print the list of the items in the grocery list, and also we can modify. But one thing we haven't really done, we can also remove as well. But one thing we haven't added yet is the ability to query the array list to find an item in our grocery list, in other words. So let's go and have a look at doing that. We're going to create a new method to do that, and the method is going to be find item. So we're going to come down here and type public string find item string search item. So we're going to receive a string. We're going to search for that in our array list. Now what we could do, one option would be to look at the code similar to what's on line 15. We could actually use a for loop and go through each index entry and compare it to search item and see whether it's a match. And that would certainly work. But where possible, especially when you're using built-in Java classes, like using the array list, you want to see whether there's an ability to shortcut some functionality and to do things for you. So there's one example of this would be using the contains function. I'm just going to type the code and then we'll talk about it. So boolean exists equals grocery list dot contains search item. And if we just have a look at the code, I can hold down the command key and press and click on contains. And you can see it returns if this list contains the specified element, and more formally returns true if and only if the list contains at least one element. I won't go into all that other detail about equals and so forth because you'll be learning about that later in the course. The bottom line is that the code from in our array list, the code that comes with the array list class as part of Java, has got the ability to do a fast search for us. So we could still write the code to do it manually, going through and comparing each element. Why would you want to do that given that the code is being inbuilt into the ArrayList class to do that for you? So not only has it been added, but it's been optimized, it's been written by the people who've created Java, and so you really want to, where possible, use that functionality. So in this case, all we have to do literally is type, select the name of our list, grocery list, dot, contains, and then the item, and it will return true or false. True if it can find the search item in the array list, and false if not. So literally with one line of code, we're able to actually do that search. So what we're going to do next is we're going to leave that line of code for the moment. We're going to type something a little bit different, because what we want to do is return the item that's actually in the grocery list. So we don't want to just figure out that it's in there. We want to actually return the item back, because you can see that the method we've created is returning a string. So actually what I'll do is I'm just going to comment out the exists, because we don't need that now. But I wanted to show you how that actually works. We're going to use something similar though, using the index function, or the index of function. So to do that, you type int position equals grocery list dot index of search item. And what that does, it does a similar thing in that it actually searches the array list for you, and it finds the item that you've passed, in this case search item, and it returns the index position of our array list of that item. And if we have a look at the code again, holding down command, press index, it turns to -1 if this list does not contain the element, otherwise it returns the element. So we can do a check here to see if it's equal to -1, then we know that it didn't exist. So what we can do there after this line then is we can put if position is greater than or equal to 0, then we can do a return grocery list dot get position. And then what we'll do is we'll put the code down here to return null. So again, what I've done, int position equals grocery list dot index of search item. So that's going to return a number corresponding to the index position in our array list for the searched item. Now if that number returned is less than 0, we could have actually put less than. It's probably better to do that. So put less than 0, easy to read. If it's less than 0, sorry, if it's greater than or equal to 0, we need to return it. Otherwise, if it's not greater than or equal to 0, it means it has to be less than 0. It's going to return no, it's the code down here is going to be executed. So essentially we're saying here, if it has found the element, we want to return the contents that's in that particular array list entry back as the return data. Otherwise we're going to return null, which means that we weren't able to find it. So at this point, we now have a fully featured grocery list. We've got the ability to add a grocery item. We can print out the list. We can modify an item, in other words, update the contents. We can remove an item from the list, and we can now also query the grocery list and figure out whether there's a particular item that exists in there. So let's go back to our main class and write some code now to start work on manipulating this list. So I'm going to go back to the main.java, and we're going to add a couple of things. We're going to add a scanner, private, static, scanner equals new scanner, system.in, so that we can get some input from the keyboard. And we also want a grocery list, which we just created that class. So it's private static grocery list and grocery list equals new grocery list. Now that's not coming up, and just go back and have a look at the grocery list class. What I've actually done is when I created the class in the previous video, I put it in the wrong place. And we just move this over, you can see what's happened. So you can see we've got the main class is in com.timbachalka, but if we go back and have a look at the grocery list, there's no package, and that means that I'll put it in the wrong place. So what we can do is we can just click it once to select it and then drag it into com.timbachalka, release the mouse, and it actually says, do you want to move it? So the good thing about doing this is that any references to that code should be updated automatically. So we had an error in our main.java, but now if I click on refactor, we should find that that error goes away. You can see the red underline disappeared, and you can see that that automatically fixed itself, and that's because we've now put it into the right class. So again, using the IntelliJ tools where possible is a great way to save checking a lot of your code and making sure that your code is more accurate. Okay, so let's get now into the main method, and we're going to start typing some code in here. So we've got boolean quit equals false, int choice equals 0. We're going to start with print instructions. It's going to be the instructions on how to use the grocery list. And we're going to use a while loop, so while, not quit. So we're going to continue processing until the user decides to exit. We're going to type a prompt or show a prompt, enter your choice. Then we're going to do choice equals scanner.nextInt, because we're selecting an integer because it's a list of options that are going to be shown on the screen, which are all numbers. So we need to do the next line to clear the input buffer. Then we're going to use a switch for the choice that was entered by the user. If they enter 0, we're going to print the instructions and break. And we have to write that method yet. If we're going to, if I select number 1, that's going to be the printout. So grocery list dot print grocery list. In the case, we need to break after that. Remember to add your breaks there. Case 2, we're going to add an item. And we're going to write that code shortly. And we'll also break out of it once we've done that. Okay, so case 3 is going to be modify. 3, we're going to write modify item and break. Case 4, remove item. All these little methods we're going to write in this class, hopefully in this video, get them all done in this video. And case 5, we're going to do a search for item, and then break. Case 6 is our way to get out. Quit equals true, break, and that's all we need to do there. So that's our main method. And what we now need to do is write some of these other methods. And essentially, just to be clear, based on what the user has typed in, we're going to perform one of the following methods. And you can see pretty well self-explanatory which method is which, depending on which option is selected. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste in some code here just to save a bit of time for the print instructions. So I'm going to come down here and paste that. And you can see the list of options there on the screen. So we've obviously got option 0, print choice options, which is the menu. Option number 1 is to printing the list of items, grocery items. Number 2 is to add an item to the list. 3, 4 and 5 is modify, remove and search. And number 6 is to quit the application. So I won't say too much more about that. That's pretty straightforward. Next one we want to write though is the add item. So let's write that one. So that's going to be public static void add item. And what we're going to do there is we're going to do a system out, but we're not going to do a print line. We're going to keep it all on the same line. And we're going to put, please enter a grocery, or the grocery item. And we're going to type grocery list dot add grocery item, and we're going to do scanner dot next line. So whatever they've typed, we're going to add that as an item. So that's the add item. You can see it's pretty straightforward. So you can see with that one line, scanner dot next line, it's allowing us to type in anything until return is pressed, and then it's going to take that, whatever they've typed, and add it to the grocery class using the add item. And of course that's going to come back here and grocery list dot add and add that to our array list. And notice that as I'm filling in some of these methods, they're becoming highlighted. And highlighted, I guess I mentioned in a previous video, is IntelliJ's way to say it's in use. Modify, you can see at the moment, isn't being accessed, so it's in dark grey. So this can be a really handy way just for you to see whether you've got some code that's not being used, and you can perhaps refactor your code and fix those errors. Fix that code up, I should say, to remove any redundant code. But we'll go back to main. So let's now modify, and that's going to do a similar thing. We're going to actually get the item, enter the item number, and then enter the new item and allow you to update it. So we're going to create that method. So it's going to be public static void modify item, and we're going to do a system out. We're going to get rid of the ln, so it's printing on the same line. Enter item number. Again, it's the item number to search for there. We're going to get an integer, so int item number equals scanner dot next int. So get the int, the number. Then we clear the buffer, scanner dot next line. Then we want to do enter the new item. So what we'll do is, to make it more sense, we'll put enter replacement item, enter replacement item. That should be enough. Like so. And we're going to do string new item is equal to scanner dot next line. Grocery list dot modify grocery item, item number take 1, new item, and that will update it. And again, if we go back to our grocery list, notice how that then highlighted, because that's now in use. We've now created that. You might be wondering here, why are we deducting 1 from item number? Well, as you know, arrays start counting from 0, but in the case of humans, when they're printing out lists and so forth, we're actually starting the count from 1. And that's why we need to deduct 1 off the number, the item number that has been entered by the user, to actually be accessing the correct element. If you go back to the grocery list, you see here on line 18, we're actually printing an item I plus 1, because it's starting, we're basically starting the list with 1, and that's why we need to then deduct it from what the user has selected, because they'll type the 1 as the first item to go back and point to the right item. Okay, next one is the remove item. Public static void remove item. And what we want to do there first is we want to ask for the item number. So I can copy some of this code. That's all going to be the same, asking for the item number. So going to the next line, and then we're going to do grocery list dot remove grocery item, item number. Okay, so that's our remove item. And next, we've actually got only one more to do now, search for items. So let's implement that. Public static void search for item. And we'll do system out, remove the ln. Items, actually we can probably do something up here, I think. No, we haven't got one that does exactly what we want. So we're going to do enter, item to search for. And we're going to do string search item equals scanner dot next line. And we're going to put if grocery list dot find item search item is not equal to null. And we're going to print out a message to say found plus search item in our grocery list. We're going to put else out search item plus is not in the shopping list. And by the way, just in case you're wondering, I didn't add a -1 here to line 73, but I'm just going to show you what happens with that not in there as we actually run the app. So that's it. Now before we go through this one more time, let's run it and actually show the output. Now if we actually run it, You can see we've got our menu options, so enter our choices, so we can actually type 0 or select option 0. That should give our menu, so that's actually working nicely, nothing untowards there. Now if you go to print out the list of grocery items, you have 0 items in your grocery list. Well, that's correct, we haven't added any yet. So let's go ahead and add some items. So we're going to do option 2 I should say, to add an item to the list. Actually what we'll do is type cheese for the first one. Enter your choice again, and we can go 1 to print the list of items. We've now got cheese, so let's add another item. So option 2, milk. Okay, print the list again, and we've now got 2 options, so that's working nicely. And let's try adding one more, so 2, bread. Okay, and then we'll print the list out. Yes, it's still working, so that's good. So let's now try and do a search. Let's search for an item, so option 5. Item to search for, let's just type Coke. Coke is not in the shopping list as we'd expect. Option 5 again, bread. Found bread in our list, so that's good, that's working nicely. Let's try to modify. Item number, so the first item number is cheese, so let's change cheese. Let's type cream cheese. Grocery item 1 has been modified, so let's now do a printout. Cream cheese is now updated, as you can see. We've also got milk and bread still there. So let's now print out the list again to remind ourselves what the menu options are. Let's try and remove and see what happens. Now we should actually get something weird happening here. So we'll just, we can see the list on the screen. Option 1, cream cheese. Option 2, milk. Option 3, bread. So let's try and remove item 3 at the moment. And look at that, we've got an error straight away. And why are we getting the error? Well, the problem is we're trying to we're basically deleting an entry that doesn't exist. If we look at the error, index out of bounds. So the problem is we've actually got 3 elements starting from 0, 1, 2 in the array list, and we're trying to access position 3, item 3, because we actually chose item 3 here, and because we didn't deduct 1 from it, we're trying effectively to access element 4 of the array list, and we've actually got an error. So we can't do that. So what we need to do is change the code in the remove item to make sure that we pass a -1 to that. And I'm going to close that run window down. And by the way, what you could do there, you could go back to grocery list for the modify. You could assume you could deduct 1 off the position there instead, bearing in mind the output is already showing a +1 there. And likewise for the get here, when you're removing, we could have done that as well. We could have actually assumed and deducted the position off there, like so. But generally you wouldn't want to do that, because it's probably better practice in this case to be updating the main class, and that's because we've set up the mechanism in this page to print out things in a certain order. And it does make sense to sort of change this grocery list class if that's going to be the functionality. But see, ordinarily you wouldn't be printing out the list here. You'd normally, that printout, the print grocery list would be something that probably you'd print out in the main class, and consequently you wouldn't be worrying about +1. So in other words, you'd be assuming anytime the add grocery item, modify, remove methods were called, that the correct array list entry, the correct number was already selected. You didn't need to add to take 1 off it. So just to make that clear, you'd normally be doing that sort of code in here. So consequently, I think it makes more sense at this stage with our program to have the -1s in here. So okay, I've got that now working. So let's go back and run our program again very quickly, because I know this video is getting a little bit long. We'll add some entries. Oops, I typed that in the wrong place. In here, option 2, bread. Option 2, cream cheese again. Option 2, milk. Option 1, we've got 3 items you should now be able to remove for item 3. And now if we do a printout, we should find we've only got bread and cream cheese left because we've deleted milk. Bread and cream cheese, so that's good. That's actually working like we should, like we'd want it to. The other thing to point out now, just before I finish the video, if we go back to our grocery list, I'll just disconnect and close that down, is we didn't have to use positions. What you might want to do in an ideal scenario here is not force the user to have to specify a position, but to actually use something along the lines of what we've done with find item, where they can just do a search. You want to remove an item, you type in the item number, and you'd use a mechanism similar to what we did in find item to find the position and delete it that way. That's certainly something you could do. And in actual fact, in the next video, we're going to do just that. We're going to leave the existing capability of these methods to use positive position numbers and the string, but we're going to add some new methods so that you can just really enter the item and it actually finds the item and updates it for you. So it's just making things a lot easier. So you sort of see the long-winded way of doing it. In the next video, you'll see a shortcut. So I'll see you in that next video.